Kirby Smart and Dan Lanning, what can you tell us about those guys? They should get along. They've coached together forever. But now at two of the top programs in the nation and one the preeminent program, they can't seem to get along.
Yes, and it was a little bit of a weird shot. So Kirby Smart started this. He said that he joked that he would love to get some of that NIL money from Nike founder and co-founder and Oregon alum Phil Knight, based on what Phil Knight is doing at Oregon. Dan Lanning responds jokingly, I think it's impressive that guys like Kirby have been signing the number one class in the country without any NIL money this entire time. Sarcastically.
Right. Which we all know that Georgia is getting a ton of NIL money in its program because we've seen pictures of Carson Beck and other players with Lamborghinis. I don't think there's a significant difference, quite frankly, in the spending. We talked earlier about how Ohio State had spent $20 million. I think that number sounds about right. What do you think an elite player like Caleb got it? Caleb, what do you think an elite player like James Pierce would be worth?
Well, position matters too, but I'd throw seven figures at James Pierce. I'd throw a mill.
It's a very good number. You picked a very good number. So yes, I would too. And James Pierce, think about the leverage he has. Now, he can't go play football elsewhere in like the G League or something like that. But he could say, I've seen guys sit out time, and I would like to sit out a year. And I would like to just prepare myself for the NFL draft. Somebody is going to do that soon if the NIL money gets any restrictions put on it. But at this point, I don't think that can be the case. But James Pierce at $1 million? No, doesn't bother me at all. Now, I wonder if Kirby Smart is upset at all about the Roman Gabriel situation. Could that
you mean the Dillon Gabriel situation?
Dillon Gabriel situation. Because it's one thing to take away a team's Lance Hurd, who is going to be a backup for LSU. It's quite another thing to take away a Dillon Gabriel from an Oklahoma after the season he had. And that's an impactful player. We didn't talk about that in the offseason, but when that guy moved, I mean, can you imagine for a second Nico Iamaleava balls out and Lincoln Riley says, that's my guy. The only way to save my job is to give him $20 million. And hey, there's Will Ferrell. Let me ask him for the money. And can you imagine losing your quarterback in the middle of his career to another?
Kirby Smart didn't lose Dillon Gabriel, though. Remember, he left Oklahoma.
Right. So, but I wonder if that bothers Kirby Smart.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, now that Oklahoma's in the SEC, you defend your own guys. And we talked about Kirby Smart is not the dean, but he's going to be the leader of the coaches. I wonder if he's kind of calling out Oregon, saying, it might be legal, but it's not gentleman's rules. That makes sense.
I'm going to go a little deeper here. But first, Dave, I know who he is because I'm a football historian, but your age really showed when you said Roman Gabriel. So I'm going to let you explain who Roman Gabriel is.
He was a quarterback for the Rams back in the day. Dillon Gabriel, I'm sorry.
Yes. He won NFL MVP in 1969. Mm-hmm. Now, Kirby Smart does have a problem in this regard. NIL has become the great equalizer for schools like Oregon and for schools even like Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And here's why. I've told you guys 1,000 times, there are 3 schools, just 3, and it's my Les Miles rule. There are 3 schools where someone with Les Miles' IQ could be their head coach and go win a national title. LSU is one, and he won a national title there. The other 2 are Georgia and Ohio State. Those are the only 3 schools. I don't even think Miami. You may disagree with me with Miami, Dave. I don't think, maybe Miami in the 80s. I don't think Miami now. I don't think you can do it at Miami now. So Georgia, LSU, Ohio State. You don't even need to hire a coach at those schools. Just name a captain and you'll get the talent to win a national title. Kirby Smart's been enjoying that a lot over the past 7-8 years. And NIL has made it harder for him to have a lock on that state. the way he needs to. And I think it's very frustrating for him. Oregon does probably have more NIL money because Georgia and LSU are reportedly behind the curve on NIL. I've heard that from a few sources, actually. Nick Saban, one of the reasons I think he retired. Now, we broke the story last week, by the way, about Jeremy Pruitt, and that trended a lot of people. That was revealing. Dave broke it at SEC Media Days. I think the other reason is he couldn't get Alabama boosters to cobble up the money he needed to recruit. And it was frustrating him that he was losing recruits to Texas A&M and Tennessee and people like that. Kirby Smart is very, very upset that he is losing the most built-in advantage that you have coaching at Georgia. Now, some of y'all are going to come and say, well, why did Mark Richt win a national title at Georgia? Georgia did have strict discipline standards under Mark Richt, and that held him back. So once they got rid of those discipline standards, it was over. They were just going to easily win national title after national title, as they've done. I think Kirby, there are some coaches you would ask them, do you like NIL? Josh Heupel would say yes. I think Heupel likes NIL. Don't you, Dave? I think Heupel actually likes the NIL in college football.
I think he loves it. Who wouldn't want $20 million to spend a year?
Dan Lanning loves it. Kirby Smart hates it. And so does Brian Kelly. Because they now have to compete for players that they used to have locks on that were the best in the country. And they didn't have to go anywhere to do it. They don't like having to compete. They had the inside track. I want to know your thoughts on this, Dave, because I think that's where it comes from. Georgia and LSU and Ohio State are no longer schools where you can just put a bland, team captain as a head coach and go win a national title the way you used to be able to.
I think that's true, but I think you're selling Josh Heupel short a little bit. I think his offensive approach, I think Josh Heupel would be successful. His offensive approach, the way he's able to build culture, we overused that one too.
I haven't said anything negative about Josh Heupel.
Well, let me say this. I think he'd be fine without that. I don't know what's playing here on my computer. I think he would be perfectly fine without NIL. Sorry, my computer.
No, I think so too, to a certain degree, but that's because you just said it, because he has a creative offensive approach. Tennessee is not a school. I'm sorry, Tennessee fans, you may not like this. It's not a school where you could just put a blah, average, low IQ individual as your head coach and they just go stumble into winning a national title. It used to be that, but it's not that anymore. Is that fair to say, Dave? Tennessee has to have good coaching. They have to have a coach and a good staff that knows what they're doing. LSU and Georgia and Ohio State never needed that. And I think that is where Josh Heupel does have that. So what you're saying about Tennessee rings true. Now, with Josh Heupel's offensive creativity, if there was no NIL, Dave, he still wouldn't be beating it. He wouldn't be winning regularly battles with Kirby Smart, given what Kirby Smart's done at Georgia to this point. Kirby Smart would always be like getting number one classes at this point, and it'd be nobody would, not just Josh Heupel.
Let me ask you this. If not for NIL, does Tennessee beat Alabama in 2022?
Yeah, yes, because the NIL really hadn't kicked off yet, and that talent was already in there.
Yeah, and I would argue too. Now, if I had it in there, I think I know where you'd go. If I said no transfer portal, no NIL, like old school football, they're not winning that game in 2022. They're getting pounded. They don't even have a quarterback.
No, exactly. I agree. You're right. That the transfer portal helped them win. Crystal asked, why wouldn't I add Texas to the list? I've always said this because Texas has, and Dave knows this with recruiting, Texas has a ton of competition for their recruits in the state of Texas, right? Texas A&M, Oklahoma, then all those smaller Big 12 schools pluck a few players out. So that's why Texas. And Derek says LSU and Georgia weren't good in the 90s and the late 80s. Different time. Georgia hired the worst head coaches in the history of the world. And so did LSU, actually, to be fair.
They have struggled at times with their coaches.
Who hired worse coaches, LSU or Georgia?
Okay. Would you rather be at Tennessee with $20 million in NIL or at Georgia with $10 million in NIL money?
Tennessee with 20. Tennessee with 20. And having more NIL money is an equalizer. That's why Josh.
I'd rather be. I only think that helps you with maybe 3 or 4 players. Like really significantly helps you. I think there's a number you can't be below if you're Kirby Smart and expect to have success. But I think with his discount, I'm going to say it's 25 to 50%. that you would go there right now. And that may change with the more success that Josh Heupel has. But right now, you would take that discount, and it's a significant cut of about 25 to 50%, in my opinion. Now, that's not coming from anywhere else. But well, let me ask you. You got a little boy. He's got a while before he's going to be a superstar football player. If you looked at it with Kirby Smart, known commodity, Josh Heupel, almost a known commodity. Kirby Smart says, we're going to come give your son, who is a fantastic quarterback, we're going to give him $100,000 a year. And Josh Heupel says $150,000 a year.
And he's a quarterback. That's the position he plays?
Because I'm going to keep going.
Quarterback, I'd go Georgia because he'll be developed better at Georgia. Josh Heupel will make him a bigger star, but the talent is so loaded at Georgia, and he'll be developed better. He's not going to be developed for the NFL under Josh Heupel. Sorry.
Okay, well, I thought you would. That surprises me. I thought you would side with Heupel on that. So let me switch gears a little bit. What position would you take a discount if young Quincy comes to you and says, should I take less money to go play for Kirby Smart than Josh Heupel because of his history in the NFL?
I think that if Quincy was a wide receiver, I would actually have him take a discount to play for Josh Heupel instead of Kirby Smart.
I would agree with that.
If he was an edge rusher, I'd have him take a discount to play for Josh Heupel.
No, that's equal to me. Anyway, any other positions?
No, those are the two.
And Travis, we're not talking about crazy money. We're not talking about somebody handing Nico $20 million. I mean,
let's do it.
Well, I mean, but yes, anybody can be bought. So if somebody went to Carson Beck and said, hey, you have to sit out 3 years, but we're going to give you $1 billion. Well, he's going to do it. I mean, $1 billion. I mean, yes, anybody can be bought, but there's still a lot of other factors.
It's like
decision.
That's the thing. People always say that, like, oh, they would take this money. Well, yeah, but it depends on how much more you're offering them. Obviously, yeah. There's a difference between 150 and 100,000 and $1 billion and 100,000. Okay, like that. Like, yes, you're chasing the money with I'm chasing the money with $1 billion. If a school says, hey, Quincy, we're going to give you $20 million, I'm like, I don't care if it's like Appalachian State A&M University that's in nowhere, Dakota. Okay, somehow Appalachia and Dakota. That's terrible geography.
But if it's 15 million, you're going to go to Georgia or Tennessee, right?
Yes. If Georgia's offering 15, then go to Georgia or Tennessee. Yes. But if they're offering 100,000 and the other school's offering 20 million, take the 20 million. You don't know if you're going to the NFL. You got generational wealth right there.